Hi, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about manifestation and abundance. I'm really excited about this topic. It's one of my favorite topics, mostly because it's one of the topics that personally I can tell you I've struggled with as well. So all of what I'm going to be teaching you today in the course of half an hour, however long it takes, depending on your questions and depending on what comes through me, is more for your awareness. And one thing I'm getting guided to say to everybody who's listening live or recorded is that abundance is a conversation that a lot of us struggle with because we've been taught an opposite belief, okay? Kind of like when I teach health to clients, we've been taught a belief that health is outside of us. We've been taught a belief that health is in the doctor's office or the walk-in clinic or whatever. But similarly, when it comes to abundance, we've been taught that abundance comes from our jobs, comes from someone outside of us, comes from a stock investment or the how much you own in a house. So we've always been taught that abundance is outside of us, just like we've been taught that health is outside of us. And there's so many things we've been taught is outside of us. So today's class on abundance is really about taking it inside. But one thing I'm going to say, as somebody who's constantly rewiring the same topic, is that please don't worry or think you need to figure it all out in this 1 hour podcast, okay? It doesn't work that way. It is one of these things that not every single second of the day, but it's like a constant awareness as to where our focus is when it comes to abundance, okay? Because similarly with health, we think that health is, say, in a pill bottle or something outside of us, and to rewire that to that it's inside of us can be a bit of a challenge because we've always been taught something different. So it was about 4 minutes to when the webinar was starting. So in our time zone, 4 minutes to 10 on a Saturday morning. And I've been up since about 6. And my son, who's now a teenager, sleeps in, right? Which is different than the kids who I'm hearing running around outside because I live in a townhouse complex with a lot of kids and toddlers and teenagers. And so he's still asleep, was still asleep, and which isn't abnormal when you're a teenager. So at 4 minutes to 10, I was just about to hit click start, and you're going to see why this is part of our abundance conversation. He walks into the room. He goes, "Hey, Mom, I figured out I'm going to do my chores today." I said, "Okay." He's got chores like put out recycling, clean his bathroom, just pretty basic chores. Which if he didn't have, don't ask what the bathroom would look like. So. And he gets paid a certain amount of money for doing those chores. And anyway, so he said, "I'm going to do my chores today." I said, "Great." And he said, he's got a long list of them. So whatever, it'll take him a couple hours, an hour, whatever it takes. He said, "But once I do my chores, you, Mom, will owe me this much. And then I've got this much banked from the chores I did 2 weeks ago that you haven't paid me for." I'm like, okay. And then he said, "And then I'm going to use that money. And then you're the bank. So you're going to order this and this and this from Amazon, and that will cover the shipping and everything else. And then we're fair, right, Mom?" And I'm like, "Okay." I said, "Did you figure out all the costs of everything, shipping, da 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 da?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Canadian dollars?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, okay, that's totally cool. But you want to understand, from 0 to a certain age, you think of your abundance as your parents." Does that make sense to you guys? That's why I want to share that story with you. You think of the person who's going to help you with your abundance as those people. Like when we did health, we think of it as the clinic or the doctor's office. When he walked in at 4 minutes to 10, I'm laughing because I'm thinking to myself, that's what I'm teaching today. That's so funny that you walked in. So that creates essentially a powerlessness because we're always looking for them to fix this issue for us. So if he wants to order a record or a t-shirt or a poster, he has to come to me. So what is ingrained in his brain is the powerless concept around money. Can you guys see how that happens? Yeah, I see some heads nodding. That's exactly what happens, is that I need to do X, Y, Z. I need to make sure Mom and Dad are happy in order for me to receive this record I want or this t-shirt I want or whatever he wants. But it's not as easy for him to just click a few buttons and get it because that's not how our society is set up. So you can see every day, every week, every month that goes by, we have these neural pathways that are ingrained in our brain that affect how we think about things. as I was telling you guys, I've been up since about 6 in the morning, which isn't abnormal, but I didn't actually go work out because I got the guidance to stay home. And I was actually doing some journaling and meditating. I drew this picture. I don't know if it's going to actually show up. I don't know if it'll show up. Let's just see here. It might show up later. Okay, no, it's not showing up with the light. That's okay. I'll explain it. So I'll explain this later on. So the concept of that picture is that we have a dominant neuropathway. So think of it this way. There's a dominant neuropathway. And I think of it as going perpendicular or vertical like this. Okay, that's how I think of it. But you could think of it like this. You could think of it as horizontal, whatever you want to think of it as. But there's a dominant neuropathway, an energy of light and love that comes like this. Got it? And I think of that as the neuropathway of abundance, of love, of power, of wisdom, of divine, of source, of health, of spirit, whatever you want to call that. Okay? And that's where it all is. It's right here. Okay? So I just want you to visualize that. And then I drew horizontal neuropathways that go like this. Okay? And they're horizontal, but they're kind of like on a diagonal. Okay? And the ones on diagonal, they're not wrong. They're just neuropathways that tell us something different. Okay? So if this is the neuropathway of abundance, then as you saw with my son who walked in, his neuropathway that's horizontal is, in order for me to get anything, I have to do something. Do you see how that works? And each of us have that. That's why I said to you guys when I started, for me, it's been work to rewire this one. But in order to rewire these other ones, we have to look at the dominant one. And I know a bunch of you guys are on the call right now. We're in the year webinar on Tuesday, or the podcast if you listen to the replay. A lot of the work that most of us teach in this realm of work is to understand what these diagonal neuropathways are showing us. Got it? So for example, for me, one of the diagonal neuropathways around, say, the abundance conversation is that you have to work hard. Got it? And if that's a neuro, and some of you are on the relationship class I was teaching on Wednesday, and that was something that we were talking about, is what were the neuropathways of your parents? We were talking about that on Wednesday. And one of the neuropathways, when I think of that, is life is hard, work is hard. Do you see how that would occur? That if that's what you were taught or that's what you saw, then that's what you would put into your life as a thought and belief system. So thoughts become beliefs, beliefs become reality, right? So in order to rewire the abundance conversation, we want to first look at what these diagonal ones are. Pretty simple. And if we don't look at the diagonal ones, then we'll trip across them, because the diagonal ones are the ones that are in the back of the mind that occur all the time. They're the louder ones, even if we don't listen to them. Kind of make sense? Makes sense. But this one, the big one that comes from the higher self, which we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about, this big one is actually the truth. But for a lot of people, it feels boring to look into. It feels kind of like, why would I look at that? That's kind of boring, or it doesn't have a ton of juicy energy to it. So I'm going to trip over the stuff that has more momentum. And the ones that have more momentum is that this is hard. How do I do this? What do I do? Do you see how that riles more on you than the light? Think of TV for a second. There's a few TV channels out there like OWN, Oprah Winfrey's channel, that really do talk about love and light. Not all the time, but a fair amount. Then in our house, we have like 1,000 channels. Half of them are music. But, there's 400 channels of content, of movies and this and that. Don't even ask me what my husband does. I don't have a clue how we have this many channels. Anyways, but what I often find is, even though we have the Oprah Winfrey channel, I'm more likely to go to this channel. My brain wants to go to the channel where there's more action, where there's more juicy stuff. It's how our brains are trained, and it's okay. But what happens is the juicy stuff only takes us into those diagonal neural pathways. Got it? So first we're going to talk about the diagonal neural pathways we might have about abundance, and then we're going to go into the vertical neural pathway on abundance, which is the light of energy. So for example, if I was doing this topic, say around health, a lot of the diagonal ones would be, health is outside of me, health is hard, I have to go see somebody for help, my pain will never get better. Those are the diagonal ones on health, for example. I just want to do that one first. And then the one of light is, your body is constantly regenerating and reforming. You are the creator of your experience. You are infinite love in a human body. And a lot of you have worked on health with me in the past, so you can see the difference. Abundance is no different. And I could do the same exact thing on relationships. The guys want me to do these other topics before I hit abundance, so you guys get it. A lot of the diagonal ones on relationships would be things like relationships are hard. Vancouver has no men. Whenever I get into a relationship, I feel torn and tattered. I never feel like I can express myself in relationships. Like, these are the diagonal ones. Do you see how that occurs? Okay. And yet there are relationships which are of the higher entity, which are of just love, right? Which takes work, don't get me wrong. And when you go into that energy, then it's like, well, you know what? I can have a relationship. It is possible. So it's looking at these diagonal ones and looking at this vertical one, and then looking at the diagonal ones and seeing why and how it was formed. Okay. So let's look at some of the diagonal ones that you have around money. Okay. So the most common ones around abundance are things like money is hard to come by. I have to work hard for money. Money is outside of me. Money always goes to them and not me. Like, so I just want you to see that those are things that y'all, because I'm just tuning into you guys, y'all have in your field. Got it? And they want me to do a few more. Money's hard to come by. I have to work really hard for money. I'm not allowed to have money. If I have money, then it's bad. Money is egotistical. Oh, wow, that's stuck in somebody's throat, what I just said. They get it. I don't get it. They know more than I do, so they can get it. What else? Those are the main ones. Those are the main ones they're giving me for you, for the people who are on the call today and who are listening to the podcast. These are ones that do not serve you. You guys can see that, right? Kind of makes sense. Those are ones that are not of the highest and greatest good for you. They're ones that trip you up. They create stress. They create anxiety. They create a pressure. They create fear. So I just want you to see that those are the not so good feeling ones that don't feel so good in your body. Okay. But what I also want you to understand is each of us were taught that. Does that make sense to you guys? We were all taught that. And that's not bad that we are taught that. It's not bad. But we're all taught that for a reason that occurred generations back. Kind of makes sense? So I personally was sitting in meditation this morning, which is why one of the reasons I didn't go work out is because I got us to just sit and be in these belief systems. So one of mine is you have to work hard to prove yourself. So I was looking at where does that come from? And in my own family, my personal family, we don't talk about my grandparents or my great-grandparents. My parents had immigrated from India, and they really adore their family in India, but they don't talk about the past. They don't talk about people that have died. They don't talk about stuff that happened in the past. They just don't. It's like one big wall. So whenever I try to ask, I get, oh, it doesn't matter. And that's fine, because I think that's their way of coping and handling with whatever the stories were. But given what I do for work, I can tune into deceased loved ones and relatives that have been in my life and in many of your lives. And when I was doing that, I saw that, as you probably can guess, my family comes from India, as I referred to. And so at the time my parents were born, there was still the English oppression, like the British were still there. So I got the sense or the feeling that one of the reasons that neural pathway is in me is for fear that if we don't work hard and prove our worth and become teachers or bankers or whatever we're doing, then we'll be used by the British as servants and slaves. Do you see how that would occur? And then that was not changed or shifted because it's something that in our society is recognized as a good thing, that you've got to work hard, you've got to prove yourself. But you can see the initial formation was from fight or flight, and you can understand why. Does that resonate to you guys? And I'm going to give you another example that I see a lot in my clients. I have a big chunk of my clients are from the Jewish faith. My first husband was Jewish, so there's a mirror there. And so I know that faith quite well. And if you could understand the Holocaust experience and then fleeing Europe for safety and coming to North America, you don't want that ever to occur again. So what occurs in your brain, if that was your experience or you're the child of a person who had that experience, is you so want to prove yourself. So you're going to work really, really, really hard. And now here we are, 70 years later. I'm terrible with time, terrible with history. So here we are a number of years later. And if you look at America, North America, and Canada, a lot of the big industries are run by Jewish people. Hollywood, look at that. Can you see why? It's not because they're smarter. It's not because they're better. In fact, I spent 10 years in the Jewish faith personally. So we're not better. We don't know more. But all it is it's done from fight or flight. Can you see how that would occur? So a lot of these neural pathways that I want to label as diagonal are formed from a place of, okay, that's not going to happen to me again. So I'm going to do and do and do and prove. Okay. But as a result, it stops us from taking in the influx of the divine spiritual mind of abundance. The divine spiritual mind of abundance says that that's what you focus your attention on. Actually, you make bigger, and abundance is available to all of us all the time if we are willing to look that way. So I want you to take that into your heart. We might do a meditation in just a second. But abundance is your natural way of being. Abundance is your most natural asset in the world. Just take that in for a few minutes and see how that feels. You are allowed to be abundant. In fact, if you actually do some reading on abundance, and I've read a lot of books on abundance, mostly because I've had to rewire these for myself, and I'm always not working on them, but aware of them. If we don't look at those diagonal neural pathways that we often are intergenerationally taught to us, if we don't look at them, then we'll trip and live our life by them. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'll give you an example of one of my personal ones. And I think when you hear other examples, you can see how and why. So one of mine that was placed in fight or flight was, quote unquote, don't ever let a man take over you, or, don't ever let, and see how it's a negative thing, because my mom grew up in a village and she saw men taking advantage of women in India in the 1960s. So that's where it comes from. Okay. So that's what I had. Of course, it doesn't work in marriage very well, but in my life in Victoria, which I was for 8 years, I had three incidents of business partners, colleagues in the yoga world, which were men, where I unconsciously let them take over me and my business from fight or flight and fear. Does that make sense? And that hasn't happened since, because I've had recognition and awareness of it. It's not like I push men away, but I'm like, wow, look what I attract in. I attract in that fear. Do you see how that works? So unconsciously, we do things in our abundance conversation because of some of those diagonal ones. And somebody on the podcast needed to hear that example, because you keep reliving those. You're like, why do I keep doing this? Until you get to the root of what's happening. Why were you taught that? How do I shift this? And how do I change this constant conversation I have? Because the truth of the matter is, the divine mind is your eternal abundance. Everything you want comes from this divine mind. The other way I like to think of it, if I look at the sky or the air, is everything is like a soup, and all of it's sitting there, but it just needs to precipitate. You know how you think of salt and you put it into water and it needs to precipitate down? I think of every manifestation or abundance or money sitting there in air, and it just needs to precipitate down. Now, if you think of salt that precipitates down from water, I can't remember the chemical formula of how you do it, but I know I remember this from chemistry, that you take some sort of thing, you put salt in, and if you get the temperature right, the salt just precipitates down, right? You guys probably remember that from chemistry. So if you think of the world or the universe as just that space, and you can't see the money, you can't see the salt, it's kind of dissolved in the water, and then you do something to the water and then it just precipitates down, that's how you create money, which is the precipitation. But if you're focusing on if you're focusing on the money or the salt coming down, you can't actually create it. But if you focus on what needs to happen to the water, it needs to be heated up, it needs vinegar, whatever that, I don't remember the exact chemistry, whatever needs to happen to the chemistry, that is the important thing to get the salt to come down. Make sense? Similarly, for us to change the chemistry so that all of what we want is here in the universe, we have to create the chemistry. We have to create we have to create the right environment of the water for the salt to come down. Our concern is not the salt. I know you think, I want the salt, I want the salt, I want the money, I want the money, I want the health, I want the health, I want the partner, I want the partner. But that's going to happen, and then you'll be like, okay, whatever, the partner's here, whatever. Got it? And same thing will happen with money. Once you start to get in your clients, or you get in whatever you want, you'll kind of go, okay, well, I want more. But if you keep focusing on the salt, you'll forget what you have to do to the water to make it come. Let's talk about what you have to do to the water. What you have to do to the water when it comes to abundance and money is, first off, you have to trust. Second thing, you have to love. And the third thing you want to ask yourself is why. So why do I want this thing? Why do I want this partner? Why do I want this abundance? Why do I want these clients? What's the why behind it? And when you start to do that sort of a thing, then what happens is you're actually changing the chemistry of the water so the salt can deposit. Money is your natural energy yield. So money is an acronym for my own natural energy yield. Money is just an energy. And we've heard that thousands of times. And it's the most annoying thing to hear unless you truly understand it and can start to apply it. But the precipitation of the salt, when you're doing that chemistry experiment, you're not actually looking for the salt. You're just looking for the fun of it. You're looking like, how do I make this water dissolve the salt? How do I do that? How do I do that? Do I put the Bunsen burner on? Do I put vinegar in here? What do I do? And then the next thing you know, like you're having fun doing all that, the next thing you know, the salt comes down. It's like, oh, that was cool, right? Similarly, when we want to create money, we want to look at the source. And the source is love. The source is understanding that the spirit, which creates the money, is inside of us. The source is what is the why for why we want to do what we do. So I'm going to explain what I mean then in a second. So when I was running the yoga business, there were a couple of things. My yoga business was incredibly successful. And people always ask me, how did you get that business to be so successful? Because not all yoga of that style was as successful as mine was. You know, we could argue it was the first on the island. We could argue that we could have all kinds of arguments as to why it was successful. But one of the main reasons it was is because my mind was so fixated on a belief that at the time, I truly believed that the only way to be happy, the only way to get fulfillment in your life, I actually believed this. I thought this every single day. The only way to be happy, the only way to release pain, the only way to feel better was to do this yoga. That was my constant mantra, my constant chant in my mind all the time. That if you're not doing this yoga, your life cannot get better. That's what I used to think all the time. The ironic thing is I don't practice the yoga anymore, which is quite ironic. Anyways, but that was my thought and belief pattern when I was running that studio all the time. And so that thought and belief got me caught in this vertical pathway. Does that make sense to you guys? That you client are going to do this yoga and fall in love with yourself, and you can have no more happiness or joy in your life than if you show up in the yoga studio. And all of those thoughts were not of the diagonal ones. They were just pure love. Do you see how that happened? And I wasn't going out looking for students. I wasn't campaigning. I was just being in that energy, and then people would show up. Do you see how that occurs? So in each moment of your day, you can actually be in these diagonal ones, or you can be this vertical one. It's that simple. And the first reason you want to ask yourself is, why is it you want to do what you do to create money? I put that in quotes, and get into the energy of that. Because the most spiritual thing you can do is to create abundance. Abundance is the dissolving of the salt is a natural effect of who you are in your love energy. It's the most natural thing that can occur. Most of you are on live, but maybe if you listen to the podcast, you may not know this. This book that I reference 1,000 times a day is called The Abundance Book by John Randolph Price. Okay. I'm going to read a couple quotes from here because this book, and it's so tiny, it's not a great book if you are averse to the word Christ and God. I know some people are, so it's not a good book if you are. I picked up this book literally 15, 18 years ago. I couldn't read it for the first 8 years, and I only started really getting into it in the last 2 or 3 years. And it really has given me such a deep insight. But I want to read a couple quotes from here. I was rereading it this morning. I've read this so many times. But give me 1 second. I just want to pull up this quote that I saw this morning. Take your mind off the money and the material possessions, which are the effect like the salt, and focus and concentrate only on the lavish abundance of divine substance that is forever flowing from the master consciousness within you. Take a second and prove the divine within you right now. Can you feel how different that is than when we were worried about money? Like just hearing that statement, that it's within you, that all of the abundance is within you, it rewires all of those horizontal ones. But just like my kid when he walked in here 4 minutes before I was about to start, and he said, I need to order a record and a t-shirt, and I'm going to do this to get that. We all have opposite ones to this vertical one. But our most natural existence or experience is that of abundance. Our most natural way of being is that of abundance. Our most natural way is that of flow. And if that is something that takes you a month, a year, or 5 years to figure out, it doesn't matter how long it takes. Because the issue is that we are all given this task as a human to figure that out. The other thing they want me to jump into is the concept of ebb and flow. When you start to see the salt precipitating, it precipitates and it gets a pause, and it precipitates and you get a pause. And it's what in the abundance world we call ebb and flow. So there's flow and then there's ebb. There's flow and there's ebb. Just like you sit next to the ocean, you get flow of water in, flow of water out, flow of water in, flow of water out. When you're sitting next to the ocean, you don't freak out going, where did the water go? Where did the water go? Where did the water go? You don't. And the reason you don't freak out is because you see it. What if abundance was the same? What if it's all there, but you're not looking at it? And when it ebbs back and you start to freak out, what if it's still there and wants to come forward, but you freaking out keeps it back? So I want you to sit with that for a quick second and see how that resonates. Everything you want and need is inside of you right now. Everything. It's inside of you. And it is literally focusing on these new neural pathways, these new ways of thinking instead of the diagonal ways. Every thought you think, every feeling you have is an important part. You don't want to ignore it. You don't want to trip over it. But over time, you learn how to laugh at these horizontal ones that it's not for me. Abundance is not for me. It's for the guy down the street. Abundance isn't for me because I don't have an idea. It's for that person. Each and every human on the planet has things that makes them go, maybe, that sounds like an interesting idea. Maybe I would like to do that. Each of us have that. And if you have that spark, so when I had that spark when I started doing yoga 18 years ago, when I had that spark of, wow, this is kind of cool. Wow, I love this yoga. This is neat. Wow. You follow those sparks. If you don't follow those sparks, you'll just keep hitting walls. And each of us have different sparks. My son, if you ever watch into yoga class, he would never have that spark, ever. It's not in his energy field. Got it? And if he ever saw what I teach, he'd be like, no, that's not my spark. But if he went down to a music place and was jamming music, that's the spark. Don't get me to jam music. I'm tone deaf, basically. I joke with him. But you see, each of us are individual humans because we each have our spark. And if you've gotten that spark that I really like to pursue that, but fear is stopping you, that's one of the horizontal ones. Got it? And I don't care what it is. It could be acting, modeling, becoming a coach, teaching yoga. I don't care what it is. But if you get that spark and don't follow it, then you're discounting the divine inside of you. You're discounting the universe that's saying, this is your flow. This is what it is. So rewiring the abundance conversation is something that literally just takes time to figure out what the horizontal things that are occurring that are affecting us. And looking at maybe our past stories around money, looking at what we've done with money in the past, looking at how we think we have to get money. Some of us have this conversation also that money is bad. Money is the root of all evil. And when we look at that, then that only keeps us tripped up in lack. So we want to look at these horizontal ones and start to shift them and start to allow more flow in. The guys are asking me to pause for a second. Check in with you guys. How are you feeling? Any comments, questions? You guys can type in or put your hand up. Just want to check in. If you guys have anything, and then we might go into meditation and then do a wrap up. Just make sure there's no questions or anything happening. Okay, you guys are quiet? Okay, cool. So let's go into meditation. Close your eyes, guys. I'll put some meditation music on here. Close your eyes. And just take a few breaths in and out. Just get your breath and body moving. And just be still right now. Just slow your breath down and be present right now. With your eyes closed, just be with me. Be with my voice. Be with your breath. And be in your presence. Slow the breath down. And let your air come and go with ease. Deep, slow breaths. Let your belly rise and fall. Allow your mind to be quiet. And just be present. Just start to notice what the mind is saying before we begin. Sometimes the mind struggles and says, I don't want to quiet right now. I don't want to think about abundance. Just start to notice that if that's happening to you. Let your belly breath come and go. I'm going to make a few statements and I want you to see what feels better. Being abundant is my natural state. See how that feels. Being abundant is my natural state. I am allowed to be abundant. I am allowed to allow and flow. And just breathe for a few minutes. If something is feeling good, it means your mind and inner being agree. Abundance is my natural state really resonated with all of you guys today. Let's see how this next statement lands. Abundance is easy. For a few of you, there's a little heart twinge there. It's because part of you doesn't believe that. That's okay. Go back to what feels better. Abundance is my natural state. There you go. So if you find a statement as I'm working with you guys that doesn't feel so good, that's when you're diagonal, horizontal beliefs that aren't serving you. That's what we're doing. We're poking at you right now. I am no different than nature, and nature is abundant. That means I must be abundant. Just see how that feels. Good. I have permission to pursue my dreams. Again, if you get something tight in your body, it's just because you've been thought a belief that is in opposition to your divine. Maybe you've been taught that you have to struggle. Maybe you've been taught that you're not good enough. There's something going on for a few of you because that twinged a few of you. Take your breath. I have permission to be abundant. I have permission to flow. I'm allowed to be powerful. And see how all this feels as you're doing this. And notice what's coming up for you. Just be present with your breath. We don't need to fix anything. We don't need to take anything away or make anything happen. Just breathe. Last couple of statements. I am love. I am a divine entity of source. I am a powerful consciousness in a human body. I have permission to be that. And just breathe into that. Really good, guys. Let's finish off with the first one we started. My true nature is abundant. So what you'll want to do is write a few of these statements down. You are the divine in the human body. You get to choose which direction you take. And the more you can feel the ones that feel better, and notice the ones that you're tripping over and play with them, then you'll start to see that they're just horizontal ones that you were taught. No big deal. Really good. When you're ready, if you haven't already, gently start to come back to the room. Breathing slowly and easily, coming back. You guys did great. You guys look super deep. Really good. So if you haven't done so already, I highly recommend you pick up that abundance book. And also I highly recommend you actually do what it says to do. It's a great book for anything, money, health, whatever it is. It's really good because it helps to rewire our mind that everything that we're living on the planet is an effect. This is all an effect. And the cause is our connection or not. Okay. So before we wrap up, I want to see if there's any comments, questions, how you guys are feeling. And just, yeah. Thank you guys so much for joining me through this series. I think this is the last one. And I'm sure I'll do some more webinars in the fall. I'm going to be running a full day on abundance and money in September. I think September 15th. I looked at the calendar before I started. So I'll send you guys information about that. And I'll just check in if there's any comments, questions. If not, we'll do a wrap up. And then I'll send you guys the recording of this if you want to play with it. But I hope you guys have the best Saturday ever. Thank you, David. No problem. You're welcome, honey. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. And enjoy the sunshine and the heat. Holy cow. Ciao, guys.